was like, wait a minute, this is not where I'm supposed to be. So this computer has 4 p.m. and I have no idea how the recording part works, so I'm just going to go. I asked everybody to have pity on me today. I got food poisoning last night or an allergic reaction, and I fell asleep at about 7 this morning. So I am feeling great, and I'm going to do my best to talk about the meat shower mystery. If I can get my slides to work. So I'm Charlie Amio. I'm the Student Services and Outreach Librarian at the University of Kentucky. Apparently it's important that I'm a chaotic good, and I am a Ravenclaw, and I do find that important. We recently decided to expand some of our programming, mostly because as I was new and I was not teaching that semester, I was bored and I needed something to do. So we decided to do an escape room. Here's what we're going to cover today. I want to go over some defining terms, because I'm a lawyer, I'm a librarian, and I want to know where I'm starting, so that we're all on the same page, whether it's where you want to be, it's definitely on the page I want to be on. We're going to look at what some pros are doing. We're going to look at what the academic law libraries are doing, a few of them, as well as we're going to take a video tour of my room as well as possible. And then we're going to talk about how you can craft your own experience, and then hopefully I'll have answers if you all have questions. Definitions. I can let you read. We're all adults and librarians in this room. I do slightly disagree with this definition about the part trapped in a room. At least for the United States purposes, you're basically not allowed to trap people in a room. I'm going to assume that's torts. But essentially you are in a room for the duration of the experience, for a set of rooms. I have chosen to define an immersive experience because I could not find a satisfactory definition of it. If you know what live action role-playing is, also known as LARPing, that's an immersive experience. A Ren fair is an immersive experience. Escape rooms fall under these as well. Soft skills. I stole it from Wikipedia. There are a lot of definitions for what soft skills are. I'm going to be focusing on what you see in bold. That was what we were trying to kind of target with our escape room. We're going to talk about whether or not we succeeded with that at the end. Information literacy. I'm using ALA's definition. I like it pretty well. We seemed to hit our target with this in our escape room, so I'm going to stick with this definition, which is where we started. All right, what does a professional experience look like? Has anybody in this room done an escape room before? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, excellent. A couple of us are going after this to go do one as well. This is an escape room on a cruise ship. And I just want to point out, I have picked incredibly nice professional escape rooms to feature, primarily because most escape room places do not put pictures of their escape rooms online. Whether they want to keep it a trade secret, I don't know. Not all, I find a lot of the mid-range escape rooms aren't that nice to look at, so maybe that's why they're not putting their pictures up and online. This one actually really impresses me though, especially the fact that they managed to fit it on a cruise ship. This is another one. If you see this part right here, at some stage during the game, that actually will fall from the ceiling and reveal more clues or a final puzzle for the players to play with. Again, on a cruise ship. I like this one because I'm assuming it's actually a museum exhibit being an escape room. It was very unclear from their definition. And again, I was limited to who had good pictures online. I know I would just about bet that this is a game where you have to rearrange these to open up a puzzle, and I like how they have multiple rooms. This one really, really impressed me because they literally have what looks like your family room, your grandma's kitchen. I like how their final box has multiple locks, and we'll get into that. But what does it look like when a law library is doing it? Because guess what? I don't have Royal Caribbean's budget whatsoever. And my students aren't going to pay me to go through an escape room. It's never going to happen. I wish it would. They won't. So, I want to look at, this is Dalhousie. Anybody from Canada? No? One. All right. They are probably the first academic law library to do an escape room. They have gotten a grant for, I believe it was $1,780 to do their escape room. and they did a really nice one. They outfitted it. There's a fireplace in it. I don't have a picture of that. They actually let me tour this via webcam last Friday. It was fantastic. This is, let me just make sure I get his name right because I want to credit him. This is David Michaels, who's one of the reference librarians there at Dalhousie, and he helped design the room, along with Hannah Steves. This is in Halifax, Nova Scotia. She designed this poster. He built his own cryptex for it. It's very, very nice. And they send their 1Ls through it, but they've also allowed upperclassmen to go through the room as well. They are actually testing their students' ability to do print-based research in their escape room. And it's very twisted, in my opinion. You may have seen this book hit your inbox if you get any of the ALA emails. I have it here if you would like to come see it afterwards. Ms. Krosky, who wrote the book, also put together an escape room at the New York Law Institute, which is a law library, but not necessarily an academic law library. I don't believe they're connected or affiliated with a school directly. She focused on Alexander Hamilton. I could not find color pictures, so I have not provided any. Again, if you want to come see it in the book, I have it tabbed for you to look at. I'm under the impression I am the first United States academic law library escape room, for better or worse, and so that's why we're here today. I had to do a large amount of research to figure out what I wanted to do, and I really wanted to cut that down for anybody who wants to do one as well. Anybody from Kentucky? No? Okay, I'm not either. When I got to my job at the University of Kentucky, I heard a very interesting series of stories about Kentucky legends. And true stories, some of them. And one of them was the Kentucky meat shower. Picture this. 1876, your name is Mrs. Crouch. You go outside, you're making soap. Because where are you going to get your soap in 1876? You make it yourself. She's outside, she's making her soap. It's about 10, 11 in the morning. And she looks up, it's clear sky, but all of a sudden something starts raining out of the sky. She doesn't know what it is at first. She calls her grandson out of the house, he's the only other witness. And they realize it is a meat-like substance falling from the sky. She freaks out, she runs inside, she does not come back out for the rest of the day. Her husband gets home later that day, and with another man, goes around and picks up this substance that is left, because by the way, after it's hit the ground, the chickens and the pigs and the farm dog come outside and start happily eating what has fallen from the sky over a 100 by 50 foot or 50 yard area. They start collecting what's left. They end up with about half a bushel, which is 4 US gallons. I'm basing all of my information off of contemporaneous reports of the newspapers of the time. Not great reporting back in the day. There are some accounts that say there was actually 2 to 3 times that much meat collected and brought into town. I think there was definitely that much of a substance collected. The flakes were approximately the size of Mrs. Crouch's hand, but I also got a measurement that makes that completely impossible. But the average size of each flake was about 2 square inches, and they apparently came down like snowflakes. Now the question is, what kind of snowflake? I can't tell you because really bad reporting in that time. So what was the leading theory about what happened? And I want to get some of these statistics right. First of all, I do want to point out Mrs. Crouch was considered extremely trustworthy by her community. She was not known for making things up. She had decent standing in the community, and not a single person disbelieved her that actually knew her. They took those samples, preserved some of them in alcohol, just popped some straight up in glass jars, and sent them off to the scientists. At least 5 legitimate scientists studied this. I found reports in scientific magazines and journals from the time. Theories ranged from somebody setting off explosives in a nearby mountain, and by nearby I mean about 2.5 miles, and that it blew up some form of a meat substance, an animal, and that is what rained out of the sky. A couple did think it might have been a hoax because the Crouches were trying to sell their farm. I don't necessarily think it was a hoax to sell a farm because I'm not going to buy a farm where it rains mysterious meat out of the sky. Perhaps I'm wrong. One scientist believed that it was something called Nostoc, N-O-S-T-O-C, which is a jelly-like bacteria that when it rains, it will make it come alive, I suppose, out of the ground and form into these blubbery, gross, jelly, don't look it up, you won't enjoy it, but a meat-like substance. That was largely disproved because it was clear sky that day, with the exception of this meat shower mystery that rained over a 100 by 50 yard area. Without rain, Gnostic couldn't have bloomed, so that just went to the wayside. Only one guy actually believed in that one. Sorry. Most modern, and what makes most sense for a theory, is that a group of vultures, or one vulture, but most likely a group, were eating carrion, and they got scared, and they disgorged themselves. So if you don't know anything about vultures, they're a very dense animal, and they eat very dense carrion. For them to take off, they cannot do it if they have just eaten a meal. So they regurgitate exactly what they have eaten and take off, and sometimes they regurgitate that as they take off. A problem with that theory, despite it being the most prominent theory and the most reasonable theory, is that she didn't see any in the sky. It was a clear sky. From what I can tell from the accounts, her grandson didn't see anything in the sky. So while it makes the most sense, also nobody's ever really reported vultures disgorging from that high in the air. So we still don't technically know how it rained out of the sky. It is an unanswered Kentucky mystery. But what was the actual substance? Mutton is the leading theory and probably the most likely one. One hunter swore it was bar, or as we call it, bear. One scientist said that his sample was either horse lung or human infant lung because apparently they are identical, or at least at the time they are identical in terms of identification. Pretty much everybody who got it, except for Mr. Gnostic over there, believes it was meat. The tissue revealed muscle, connectivity tissue, fatty tissue, fat-like substances. Some actually ate this.
Oh,
It was, by my best estimations, rancid by the time they ate it. Nobody successfully kept it down. When it rained, you remember the animals on the farm ate the meat. Turns out the dog got incredibly sick 3 days later. I can't find anything more about the dog in the record. Dog could have died, dog might have lived. Could have been something else entirely. Ultimately, we still have no idea what it is. There are a few samples around. They are no longer in any good shape for testing. One of the local universities in Lexington has a sample. It looks horrible. I haven't actually gone to see it in person. I don't think it would get me anywhere. But essentially, we have this mystery, and believe it or not, a good chunk of Kentucky people know about this meat shower mystery. So we decided that's what we were going to do. Why not? I had time, we had a story, we wanted an escape room, so that's what we picked. I'm going to show you a couple pictures before we launch into the tour of our escape room. If you are standing, as you are the audience, at the door to the escape room, this is what you are going to see. You're going to see a lab table. If you turn to your right from that doorway, you're going to see a desk area. This is a blow-up of the desk. And then you see the whiteboard in the corner over here. On your left side, this is the left wall. This is where the door is. That's Fred. We'll get to Fred. There's a picture and the whiteboard's here. So I would hope you read my description before you came, but if not, meat shower mystery is kind of catchy. We tell the students that they are going to meet with Dr. Celeste Viand, who gets the joke. Okay, all right, a couple people. They're going to meet with Dr. Celeste Viand, and she's been researching this, and it's 1984, because we found we had a huge problem if we allowed technology into the escape room. So we cut them off pre-cell phone, 1984. The students are invited to meet with Dr. Viand to hear about her discovery of what the meat shower mystery actually is. And when they show up, she's not there. But I am. And I'm her lab assistant. I'm nice, but I'm clueless, which is kind of funny because I actually provide clues during the experience. And this was a way for us to monitor what was going on in the escape room, which is typically done by professional rooms remotely. A few rooms will actually embed people, and a few rooms actually put people in, like a zombie room, and you assume it's a dead body until you realize it's actually a human who's living and breathing and starts reacting within the room. There's also some escape rooms where they chain a zombie, and the chain gets longer, and as soon as that actor touches you, you've lost. I will not be playing one of those escape rooms anytime soon. All right, so I'm going to narrate, and I don't know how to pause it with this remote, so please, if you have questions about the video, ask me at the end of the video. But we are going to take a look. When participants come in, they get an envelope and a notebook, a scrapbook rather. Upon opening that, they are presented with a message from Dr. Deand telling them, "I'm really sorry I wasn't there. I think somebody's after me or after my research. You have to save it. It's going to self-destruct in 45 minutes. I've left you behind clues. Your first clue is that a sample bears a very close likeness to human heart tissue. This is Fred. I lost a bet and ended up having to put Fred in my escape room. Upon closer investigation of Fred, if I look inside of his heart, there is a key. But where does the key go? Does it go in the box? Opens? Nope, no floppy disks. A briefcase. Perhaps it goes here. It does. What is in the briefcase? Escape rooms are all about opening boxes, by the way. All about unlocking things. I found my first big clue. There is a code printed on that sticker that is on the film case, and within the film case is a little bit of flavor text. I am talking to the people who are finding my evidence, which is the students. I don't know what I'm supposed to do with that yet. So I'm going to return to the scrapbook. He seems almost alien. Does he perhaps have a key? Let's take a closer look. Upon zooming in on him, by the way, this is a nearly identical but not quite identical picture. You can see it right there. It said over. If I take the picture off the wall, I flip it over, I find another key. It's all about hiding keys. It will drive you nuts. This time, the floppy drive opens. The organizer. Yes, we have floppies, and yes, I checked. They were around in 1984. I locate that student, and there's a 6-digit number, but I don't know what to do with it, so I start poking around. And I find a clue. Still poking around. Find another clue. Box of floppies were in. And if I enter the 6-digit code into the keypad and I hit an unlock button, it'll do something, but the visitor is not one of us. Stacked clues for the students. What do I do with that? That's The Visitor by ABBA. And if I pull that cassette tape a little more closely, I locate a remote. If I return to my instructions, and I return to my floppy disk, which had a 6-digit code, and I put it in and I hit unlock, I will hear a click. Over in that corner, that box is unlocked because we have a remote-controlled unlocked box. I find another clue. I find a bottle of, I think it's hydrogen, and I find a bottle, not a bottle, I apologize, it's a film canister, again with a clue printed on the outside and flavor text on the inside. Did the dog eat a foreign object, or did it eat the meat? You may never know. So if I look at this hydrogen bottle, 2 specific bubbles in it are of a different color. And I provide another clue. On the whiteboard, I have written some chemical formulas and a not complete sulfuric acid, which has caused us a lot of problems, and we're going to actually have to change that one because some of these law students still remember that code from high school. So I began exploring the other chemicals. They are all labeled differently. I get to oxygen, and I realize, again, we have bubbles that are a slightly different color from the rest. I end up with 4. So my code is H2SO4. What might I do with that? There's a case hiding under Fred with an alphanumeric lock. Fun fact, that lock's from law school. I still had it around. So I enter the code. Sure enough, that works. It opens. Find out what's hiding in there for me. Another canister. Again, a printing. Again, another clue and flavor text inside that can. So now I have 3 of these. I found a 4th because I've continued poking around the room. The whole point is to explore an escape room. So I start trying to decode it. Doesn't look like I'm going in the right direction. But if I turn that can around, it creates a new clue. And as I decode it, what has hands but cannot clap? Anybody?
Clock.
Clock. You'd be surprised, sometimes it takes groups a very long time. So I grab the clock off the wall, and I have another cryptogram. And it will say, reach above the elements. Nothing on the wall there, but we have the periodic table taped to the board, and as I explore, I find tucked in there an electronic passkey with instructions telling me to swipe it over a logo. And I've likely already explored the room fully at this point, and in the bottom of the desk drawer is a case that says, do not move. I wave it over, it will actually pop open, makes some beeping noises, so sometimes people get really worried about it. And inside the box is the results of Dr. Deanne's research, and a final letter. She's on the run, but she's a little worried that they caught her, and that she thinks she knows what they do when they catch you. So it kind of evolved into an alien experience. Any questions about this video before I move on? I apologize for the rudimentariness of it. We didn't have a good way to explain how that worked. All right. So this is what we just experienced. Everything starts with the scrapbook, leads to Fred, and inside the heart's the key, which leads to a box, cipher, can, story. Going back, we find the picture, leads us to the floppies, which is a key, which using the remote from the cassette, and which the instructions were in the floppy box, all combined find this box, which combined with the further chemicals of the hydrogen and the oxygen unlock this box with more cipher, more story. Then if they put all three ciphers together, they find the back of the clock, and then putting that together with the clock cipher, they find the location of the RFID card, and they're done. Really good teams can do this in under 30. I've had teams who've taken up to 45 minutes. I so far have not had a failure, so I'm going to switch that around. So, how do you craft your own experience? Genuinely, your limit's your imagination. I genuinely think if you can think it up within reason, you can execute it and make your own escape room. But you need to first assess your abilities. And when I say your, I mean your team. Who in here is the only librarian at their institution? Nobody. But if you're going to do it on your own, you need to truly assess how much you can do. And if you're going to bring in your coworkers and your colleagues, whether they're within the library or within the law school, you need to assess what all of you can do. The first part is space. Where are you going to hold this? So we are in temporary housing right now before our new building opens, knock on wood, next month. We had an empty office, which is what you've seen, and I commandeered it, which was not popular during final exams, but it was my space and I wasn't pulling my stuff out because I have very heavy breakable pieces that are a pain to move. When we move over to our new space, we are hypothetically going to take over a study room, but all of our study rooms are glass fronted. So we are going to have to figure out how to address that, and if our escape rooms are going to actually be glass fronted or frosted glass, we're not actually sure. Dalhousie also took over a study room in their law library, and they have left it there for now, and they are not sure exactly what they're going to do. Don't quote me exactly on Dalhousie. They gave me all the permission to talk about their escape room, but I may get a small detail incorrect, and that is on me, not on them. But where are you going to put it? I know a lot of elementary schools, a lot of high schools, all through the academies, they use temporary or portable ones. Some of them have a box that they will take and they will set it up around the room. And it doesn't so much integrate the space that they're working in as it does integrate the pieces. We wanted to really integrate the space to make as an immersive experience as possible. And who's your audience? So I'm aiming at any law student because I'm not actually testing legal research skills with this room because it was a brand new room and we didn't know if we could pull it off. We decided to just go for the goodwill of the library. So far, the majority of the students have enjoyed it. Those who don't particularly like escape rooms did not particularly have a good time. Dalhousie specifically is aiming at legal research, so they've aimed at their 1Ls who have actually outperformed the 2Ls and 3Ls, most likely because they have just been wrapping up their print legal research. I have run, during the testing phase through my escape room, a sophomore undergrad maybe she's a junior. I have run through the entire library, both tech services and research. I've run our director through. I have run she does the financing for the school. I've run her through it. Basically, anybody I could beg into doing it, I've had test my room for me. One of my colleagues, we offered it to his students as extra credit if they went through the room. I got one group who agreed to do that over the summer. You need to think about your budget. I had a very small budget. My director did not necessarily is completely on board with it in terms of, he just went through it, he likes it a lot more now. We haven't had a chance to talk it over, but the budget was about $150 is what I was allowed to spend. Dalhousie obviously had $1780 in grants. They were able to do a lot more. They put a fireplace in. I mean, they didn't hide anything of it, which I find personally offensive, but they have a fireplace in theirs, you know. They partnered with antique stores to get stuff in there. I started at Campus Surplus. If you have a Campus Surplus, that's a great place to start. UK is a medical research facility. We have a lot of hospitals, and so a lot of my stuff was 1980s era scientific equipment, which worked out great for me because my escape room's 1984. Can you guess why I picked 1984 additionally? Because it fit with what I found. But are you going to have that money? Are you going to be able to ask people for something? Are you going to have a pile of stuff available to you? If it's not financially feasible, this may not be the experience for you. What are you trying to accomplish with yours? I was looking at soft skills and information literacy, both of which lend very well to escape rooms naturally. Dalhousie was looking at print legal research. I would like to do one that is GovDocs oriented and requires the actual use of GovDocs. Ultimately, our goal right now is to get the students to enjoy it and enjoy the library and enjoy the librarians and integrate with us so that we can better serve them. I would like to see what we do with it in the fall. You also really have to consider the time. To design your own escape room, it is not an insignificant time commitment. Additionally, running the room, as you saw, I am always available to the students while they're in the room. We have 5 minutes to brief them. They go in for up to 45 minutes. It takes another 5 to 10 minutes to reset the room for the next group, depending on how much damage they have done to my room or not and how much pieces get scattered. Dalhousie has the same issue. Also, how long do you want your players to play? That'll affect a lot of different things in doing the room and the amount of time you have to add to it. This is where I have failed, and we'll talk about this in Q&A if you guys don't have a bunch of questions. We don't know how to assess our success rate of the room. The students are enjoying it. It's utilizing their information literacy. It's utilizing their soft skills. We watch it blossom. Communication styles will change throughout the course of the room as they're reworking those soft skills. Dalhousie is obviously testing for whether or not they can succeed. They have a 50% success rate, which is actually what they were looking for. But 50% of the groups they're running through are not actually succeeding to reach the final end. But for their side of things, which is making sure their students are learning print research, they are happy with it, but they haven't really found a success assessment way yet either. They have filmed every experience they did. They ran it through IRB, and they're going to actually code and put out a paper on gamification, and this is one portion of it, so look out for that if you're further interested. And some other considerations include, are you going to monitor those games all the time? Some don't. That terrifies me because we have breakable things in there, and we want to make sure the students take it seriously, not to tear the room apart, not to tear up a piece of paper. Are you going to need a disclosure form? I'm about to go through the IRB process so I can do a little more work with this and take pictures and observe and take videos and be able to report on it. And ultimately, do you really have the resources to take it on? Because honestly, if you don't have one of those categories we've covered, not for you. Then you pick a theme. As we know, your imagination is kind of your limit. We are tentatively planning out future experiences themes. Has anybody heard of the Cocaine Bear? That's another Kentucky classic.
Is it a bear or bar?
Bar. Bar. And I left out all the others because I literally could not pronounce his entire sentence when he talked about the bar. We're looking at Cocaine Bear, which is basically D.B. Cooper, except a guy dropped 44 kilos of cocaine out of his plane and then he followed. He didn't make the landing either. Maybe he's the meat shower. And instead a bear found it later that winter. allegedly had 44 kilos of cocaine in its stomach. I've met the bear. It's now stuffed. It made its way out to Vegas and it made its way back to Lexington. I have no idea how 44 kilos fits in a bear's stomach. But the necropsy, the individual doing the necropsy said he had never seen a bear's belly so stuffed with anything, let alone it was all cocaine. I literally don't know how the bear managed to get 44 kilos in. So we're looking at that as an idea. Look into what you have available to you geographically. What are some of the legends of your area, or what are you trying to stress? Dalhousie's theme is set in the 30s, if I'm not mistaken, and it is about a crown prosecutor who is prosecuting the mob when all of a sudden he goes missing. The students have to go in and retrieve the evidence that he was going to provide. Was he on the take? Was he kidnapped? They find out along the way what happened to him. And again, they drew on that because that's a Halifax type based case. So they drew on their area and matched it to what they wanted to do. This is the hard part. Everything else is frosting. Understanding the design process has been absolutely the hardest thing I faced. The hardest thing, I do want to point out this was a collaborative effort. I had multiple coworkers help me create the room, help me retool the room, and everybody has tested the room. So when I say me, please do give them credit as well. I think this is required reading. It's short, it's linked. I'm going to upload my slides when I get back on Monday. I don't think you need this book, frankly. I got lost in this book, and this is where it started. I think this is aimed at a lower audience. This one is aimed at people trying to create their own escape room. Truly a well-done escape room. It's short. If you don't have time to read this, you don't have time. This is how they define escape room. And I just want to look at the bold part, which is the challenges may be made inaccessible, and you continue finding them as you solve puzzles. It's the whole point of an escape room. In their paper, they look at it this way. You have a challenge, you have a solution, which gives you a reward. This made everything click for me. I even reached out to our local escape room and nothing clicked until I hit this formula. It's a little up to debate whether you think something's a challenge or a solution or a reward, but as long as you have those clearly defined elements, your puzzle's gonna work. More likely than not. For example, if you have a locked box and we can see a moon or a sun, a moon, and a star, as the students look around the room, they realize there's 2 moons in the room, there's a sun in the room, there's 3 stars in the room. When they go back to that box, each combination will be moved to those numbers. And then within inside, you'll either have further trail of puzzles, or you have the final reward. We've actually started throwing candy in our box at the end as well, and that seems to be well received. Things to keep in mind. Is it relating back to your theme, or should it? It should. More often than not, if you can make it part of it. You noticed I used floppy disks. That's very 1984. Maybe some of the first times those students have ever touched a floppy disk, which is upsetting. We used chemicals. That was part of our theme. If I had brought in a solar system, that actually could have been part of our theme because we kind of run a little alien conspiracy theory through it that's pretty fun for the students. Don't make your students make giant leaps in logic unless that is part of your puzzle. It usually will frustrate them, and they will usually go wrong. By the way, red herrings, they will create all the red herrings that they can create to where you didn't even know you had a red herring in your room until they came up with it. I have been deeply impressed, and I'm going to use 2 of them and turn them into actual puzzles. This is the big one, though. Do they need outside information to solve it? Obviously, with legal research and print, they're going to have some outside knowledge coming in. But if you provide them with all the tools, then you've done it successfully within the room. All the books that they're going to need. Dalhousie actually has it where they have to convert between 2 books, I believe. And if you know anything about Texas legal research, they do that there when they've recodified things. My coworkers did an escape room before I got there that was casino themed. Like they went to a professional one. They were unable to solve the room had one person in there not actually had a knowledge about how gambling worked in a casino. It required you to know the rules of roulette. Does anybody in here know roulette? I don't. I can tell you some poker stuff, I can't do roulette. That is a poorly designed escape room. You could not understand that from going in that room. They did not have the instructions in the room. You were limited by what you took in. You should not do that to your students. They will not enjoy that. And also, can it be accessed? As you noticed, I didn't climb on anything. I didn't crouch down under things. Some rooms do that. We try to keep it as open as possible so that anybody can participate within the room. There's two basic puzzle types, mental and physical. The majority of our room was a mental puzzle. An example of a physical puzzle might be one player has to stand over there on a floor target and one player has to stand on this floor target, and with the weights on both of them, it will open up a door. That's a physical puzzle. It takes some mental calculations, obviously. There's also some who use laser grids. You may have seen that on a graph. Some of them you have to successfully crawl through the laser grid to reach the clue at the other end, or it disappears before you get there, if you set it off. There's also the meta puzzle. I lost track somewhere, I apologize. One more moment. Food poisoning is no fun.
I'm not lost on the fact that you had food poisoning last night and this is your presentation today.
I'm trying. I appreciate the
The irony
patience.
guides were like, this will be fun.
You know. All right. So this actually comes from the two puzzle types come from that article that I recommend you read. There's a third type. These can combine mental and physical puzzles, or just all mental or all physical, into what is called a meta puzzle. And that is where you have to solve puzzle 1, puzzle 2, puzzle 3 to open up or unlock that final puzzle. And we'll look at an example of that in a bit. One of ours, by the way, because you saw it, was the film canisters. You had to have all of them and then all the pieces, which you then combined and decoded and led you to the clock. That accumulation that led to the clock was a meta puzzle. You want to decide when designing your room whether you're going to do a linear path, a multilinear path, I'm sorry, that's an open path, or a multilinear. So we went multilinear. We could have done better with ours. We're definitely planning to retool before we fully launch it. The problem with a linear path is that you can bottleneck. If you don't solve that puzzle, nobody can move on, nobody can refresh their brain. You're stuck there and your room's going to fail at that point if that team doesn't get past it. The great thing with an open puzzle is players can just wander around, and as they find them, they'll unlock a piece, but it's not quite as fun. You want to have some open because you avoid that bottleneck. Everybody's working. It involves less teamwork and less communication, so if you're trying to stress that information literacy soft skill thing, you're not going to really get there. Whereas with this multi-path, which is what we took, at first they could branch out, somebody can go work on Fred, somebody can be working on the floppy disks, and they can just start coming back together as a team and putting it all together. This is for a public library did this one. I picked it because it's a great illustration. It's for teams. They're all linear, but they start all open, which makes it a multilinear. So students can be working all together on one, they can be working apart, there's less chance of a bottleneck, and then they all combine into that final meta puzzle that the students are able to come together and succeed on. You look at ours, again, we have that open. These are all open. And then they filter down into a more linear puzzle. So again, that's the hard part. Does anybody have any questions while we're here? If you can figure that out, you can figure out an escape room. Next step is to source and assemble your pieces. Again, I started with surplus. I had a lot of 1980s era equipment available to me, and I went through like a kid in a candy store. It was free. Your surplus is probably free as well. I took what I wanted. Fred came from surplus. Again, I lost a bet with a coworker, and I had to cart Fred all the way down. He actually ended up being pretty handy. You'll add some locks to your stuff once you've sourced it to fit your theme and fit your puzzles. You're going to need a lot of locks. I actually got really lucky. I went to a garage sale of a neighbor's the other day, and I got 6 combination locks for $1 each. And so that'll go into my next room. Dalhousie uses this directional lock, which was pretty cool because they had some directions that as they put them together, they had to go north, south, west, east, etc., based on book titles that they had to put in library order, which was pretty cool. I don't like this lock type. They malfunction a lot. It actually malfunctioned while the pro who did the room was playing with it. So I think if you're having a hard time with the lock, it's not a great idea to throw your students in with that. They don't need extra frustrations. You have regular combo locks. These alphanumeric locks are great. You actually build them yourself. You put the pieces together. Keyed locks, I will say, have a spare key. We don't have a spare key to our floppy disk coder. I'm terrified of what happens if that key gets lost. I watch it like a hawk once they've found it. Luckily, most people leave it in there because you have to actually lock it back to get the key out. We have all of our digital locks have a spare way to get in there. Breakout EDU, you don't always have to design your own room. They offer subscriptions to where you can view a bunch of them. Most of them are K through 12. There's some collegiate aged ones. I have not found any that were aimed for law schools. They will sell the kit though for $150, 2 alphanumeric locks. They provide blacklight. A lot of rooms will use blacklight and blacklight ink. I did not want to do that because we had a very small room. And when you turn out the lights, it gets a little creepy just based on the building we're currently in, and it's a tight fit and it seems like a tort waiting to happen. They provide cards for clues. I simply tell my students as you go in, I'm the lab assistant, you're allowed to ask me for up to 3 clues. You're not allowed to say, is this the right answer? You're only allowed to ask for a clue. I think Dalhousie allows 2 questions. They actually had a student who had one of their student assistants rigged an old telephone to work with the modern telephone system, so now they use a rotary. And it calls out to the guy's cell phone that he then can provide clues with. So they actually never see that they're being observed. And I will warn you, if you're observing in person, you will disrupt the escape room experience some, even if you're fully in character, simply because you're there and you're an outsider who's watching. My cost, again, was under $100. With one exception, one of my really expensive locks was actually a failure for another project that got donated to me. But had I not gotten that, I still would have come out under $100 because I would have simply bought a secondary, lower priced RFID lock. But we had a shop through Amazon. The pieces, I had a sample, but I did not get a chance to bring it. The chemicals were made up by those water beads that some kids play some Nerfy type of game with, but also is in the flower department at Michael's. And they swell up, and we added food dye, and it was great. The students love them, and they're really fun when you shake them in the jar. It's a tactile experience. We didn't have a glue gun. Nobody had a glue gun, so we had to buy a glue gun. I mean, there's ways to bring down your costs if that's what you're after. You also want to look at what puzzle types you want. Again, I was looking for informational literacy and soft skills. We found that they just went so well hand in hand, it was almost not a goal. You had to communicate. The teams who do the worst are the ones who are not communicating. There's not a point person. They're finding clues and they don't think it's relevant, so they don't bother telling anybody they have a clue. And it gets forgotten for 10 minutes until somebody else finds it and goes, I think this is relevant. Obviously, Dalhousie is doing legal research and citation skills and the general library skills. We may bring some of those in. We have not fully decided yet. In terms of what type of puzzles, here's some suggestions. I am dying to hide a clear object in water. I don't have a room yet for that. Dalhousie actually has a clue in a trash can. They took a soda bottle, custom printed a label, and put a note in that bottle and put it in the trash can. And when the students find it, they think the note's the clue, the note's a red herring. The clue is actually the nutritional information on the bottle. I can't even imagine dealing with that one. There's clearly a reason there's a 50% success rate, which is what they're aiming for, and their students have an hour. They have key rings everywhere in there, so not only do you have to figure out if you found the right key ring, which of the 6 keys on the ring is the right key you need. They hide keys in pockets of clothing. We planned on doing that with the lab coat. It ended up I wore the lab coat. I want to put a clue on the bottom of a table leg. I haven't done that yet. You can take dates on a coin and make it a combination, and they have to figure out that they need to go into a change dish and bring out the only quarter, or whatever you want to use. And you also want to think about your difficulty level. How much are you going to make them suffer? Dalhousie really pulls it out of them. A lot of their teams take 50 minutes or more to finish. Only a very select few have done that in less. Your clues also affect your success rate, so I allow 3. I may reduce that to 2. Our last group that went through was all faculty, so they refused a clue altogether and just made it under the time limit. Again, what about red herrings? I don't think they're necessary. A lot of what you read says don't put in a red herring. Again, especially with law students, they are overthinker type A's. They are gonna find red herrings that you don't know you had. Every single time I've run this escape room, I have had to changed something with my escape room because somebody found something I didn't know I had, or created something. We found a fascinatingly complicated puzzle that one group came out with, so we're trying to decide if we can incorporate that actually into our escape room. Dalhousie has a lot of red herrings. Again, they have a lot of fake key rings. They have a lot of fake keys. A lot of misdirection. Your final step is to test. This one's time consuming. Sometimes not as time consuming as the rest though, but you want to test it as much as you can and as often as you can before even considering it live. So test it with people who aren't necessarily going to be going through the room. For instance, if you want to aim at your 1Ls, send your 2Ls through it. Or send your faculty through it, or if you have undergrads who work in the library that you can corrupt into doing your escape room, do that as well. Then step 5.01 through 99, fix it. Because they're going to break it, they're going to break things, they're going to break puzzles, they're going to break you. You're going to have to put it back together, repackage it, and test it. Again, we've made a change every single time. That is not necessarily the best plan. Sometimes you want to see if a group was an outlier. But sometimes it's obvious that, no, you messed up. It's broken. For instance, we used to have the final key on the back of the clock, and we had a team immediately walk in and try to take the clock off the wall. And I said, hey, don't take things off the wall, because at that time we weren't removing things from the wall, but they would have immediately gotten to that final puzzle, which frankly was on me, and we're still trying to figure out how we want to do that final puzzle and where we want to locate it. It will shift, but I will say hiding it above the whiteboard has done pretty well. Step 6, take it live. You created it, you want them to play with it, let them play with it. They will have a lot of fun. We're actually ready to do this in about another 2 tests. So, have not fully launched it. We hit finals and we hit a wall of getting participants. Unfortunately, I could not get it done a week sooner because I got stuck in that creative process and figuring out the paths and the loop system. And by the time I found that, I just hadn't had time to pull it up before finals. Any questions, any thoughts? If you have suggestions about assessment, I definitely want to hear those. Yes?
So I've been thinking about, but I haven't come up with any great way to do this. It might be hard for us to dedicate a space because space is so precious. But I wonder if you can kind of sort of do an escape room throughout the library.
So I want to do a scavenger hunt actually with our Maya Rubicon. We all did high school at the same place, and we had to work circulation, and so for us to learn the new library, they made us do a scavenger hunt of you have to go find this book, you have to find this book, and you had to pull out a hidden slip of paper from that area and bring it back. I want to do that for 1L orientation. That's not going to happen for us this year because of the new building. I would like to see us do that the next year. I wouldn't term that an immersive experience. I absolutely support that and think it's a great idea, but it does more fall under a scavenger hunt.
Yeah.
But you could always put out, like we have the boxes, those are actually medical boxes to hold old medicine. You could hide those boxes within the library in a place that's not obvious, like behind books, or you can hide smaller locked things that provides them the next steps, absolutely.
And even like with the legal research class, even, you could put those clues in places where people should be going to find print material, and then you'll know if somebody actually found it in print.
Yep.
Or something.
Yep. You can always have a book and highlight something. I know you don't necessarily want to write in a book, but they make these great Post-its that are see-through that you can highlight with, and then they come out with relatively little damage. You could do that, and they have to write down what that printed portion was from a page. So there's ways to incorporate that, absolutely. I think it's great for 1L orientation. Put the bathroom on there.
Yeah.
Put the water fountain on there, because that's going to be your 2 big questions.
Right.
And then put the other important materials, the AMDRs, where are the AMDRs, and they have to write down the call number or whatever. So there's great ways to run that. Anybody else? Nobody has assessment ideas for me? Come on. Yes.
So I didn't hear, well, so you haven't gone live yet. So
Correct.
What would you do with the students when they come out?
That's what we're running into problems with in terms of assessment. If we sit them down and we go, your soft skills were so great here, but they weren't great here. For instance, y'all did not communicate well. And we have found that if you allow them to self-select groups, they are much better at communication than if you throw together people who don't really know each other. I did that with a group and I was like, this was really great. This could be better. This was great. You try to pack it didn't go over too well. And it took away the goodwill and the fun that we were trying to provide. I ran a group of rising 3Ls, I guess, through it. And during it, one of the students turns to me and goes, this is really a lesson in humility. Loved the room by the end, but it really, and they were the ones who came up with all the red herrings that I just, they enjoyed it and they actually recognized as rising 3Ls. I think that actually might be a difference, that the more they've been in law school, the more they'll pick up where they had information literacy and soft skill deficiencies. But in terms of telling them we're currently stuck, we do want to do a debrief session, because we talk over it with them like, oh, well, you know, this part of the puzzle was supposed to lead to this. You happen to circumvent it here, or circumvent it there, like going and grabbing the clock. We want them to do a reflection sheet at the end, things I learned about myself, things I would have changed, suggestion for changing the escape room. We have not implemented that. That will be something we try and implement before we go live.
For assessment, you may be able to add another page, and I don't remember who at the conference I was talking with, so somebody here though, maybe not in this room right now, it is the last session.
It was me.
It was you! Okay, go, Abby! You, take it away.
Hello.
It's actually Charlie Perkins, because this was something we did at Elon. I was telling them about the group assessment.
Oh, yeah.
So when I was at Elon, we teach, in order to take first year research off the curve, you have to have graded group assignments. And so, actually, that's Emory, but anyway.
Okay.
Anyway, so part of our group assignments, we would have a thing that they had to fill out and assess, like a group assessment, but it was not just rate how much your group members contributed to this project, rate how much you contributed to the project, because they're much more honest when they have to tell you what they did.
I like that.
And so that's something, there's a couple different, where was that from?
Oh, geez, we pulled them from like 3 or 4 different places. I can
have it
email it
on the
to you.
paper somewhere, yeah, but
Okay.
that's something you could do, because then they can assess each other's contributions.
Right.
And one of the categories was like, pick everybody's strongest, biggest strength and biggest weakness, including yourself. And so that way they can kind of assess their soft skills,
Yeah.
I think, and their communication
Without
ability.
really telling them it's soft skills.
Yeah.
I definitely want a question on there about communication, because I have found that is really where the escape rooms break down. When teams are not communicating, or they're making that decision that I'm not going to share this information I found because I deem it irrelevant, that is always where it's going to break down in terms of solving it, until somebody else finds it. We had the group we ran through, the colleagues that refused to ask for a clue, they opened Fred's chest like 6 times and never found the key. They opened the heart and didn't find the key. I don't know, they found that key so far into the escape room, it was like 35 minutes in, and it was just because they weren't doing it together. And granted, they're wandering around, but nobody went, hey, I found a heart, or maybe we should look in the body. They were just kind of poking around on their own. So it always does break down on communication. And I think that's really what the escape room is getting at. What are your soft skills in terms of communication? And so we just have to have them evaluate it in a way that it gets back to them. The rising 3Ls really did see the soft skills come through, and we're discussing it as they left. Not knowing, they didn't know, they didn't know they were talking about soft skills, but they were talking about, oh, I should have done this, we should have done this in terms of communicating. So I enjoyed seeing that. It was very gratifying, but it wasn't a hard way to evaluate. Anybody else? We can go. All right, thank you. I appreciate it. Have safe travels home. Thank you.
So bad. I had
We're worried because we're about to go to an escape room and I'm pro.
Oh, God. Did you go to the thing last time?
So it could have been something I ate there. I don't know.
Maybe
I have not. Like all night, I literally did not fall asleep. I had 2 Benadryl in me.
And it was once you've done it.
And when I ate this first of all, I got a.
Wait, I don't get this. Why are we doing this? But they don't culture. But I think there has to be better. Just
right.
some sort of greater
I will be there.
I didn't feel right when I woke up.
If I could come up with great. Yeah. So this is somebody who, like, when he takes a like vacation, it's not going anywhere.
Yep.
Out in the physical, it's like, or you watch something online where other people are doing this game. Or like they're doing like watching like it's a fundraiser. There's like four communities or something are excited about these things that imagine.
But I mean,
So, we might have
let's say print it out.
fit into it.
That part of
I'm not afraid of like,
it. You can sort of chunk that out.
I wouldn't do it from an airport.
And then
I can't. And it was
variation instead of a 45 minute.
within an hour. And like, it was like 10 p.m. or 10:30
Yeah, I wonder, like,
we're supposed to get back and work.
Students who have that sort of
And I barely.
Hey, China's not taking it anymore, so.
I get on the ground to go
one I've ever done. And then there'll be your chocolate. And then the ones where like, oh, I got it.
Right. I mean, I think it's like, at least that's when you've got a trash can out there. It's ruined.
Maybe she just threw softball questions out there.
People like,
I didn't even this
do you need
discussion.
something? And I'm like,
Okay.
But I could see putting,
I can tell Carol's,
okay, okay.
but you know, I wasn't doing that well this morning, and that was
Can any, what would you do?
Sorry.
Design one.
Until there's a ring on this finger.
How would you make it work? And just,
At the pier.
you know, and not saying you have to do it or anything else, but just like, let's have a discussion on where you guys brainstorm.
Yeah.
Her sister and she has two older brothers, two older half brothers.
You don't have to answer the question. They can answer.
Right.
And I woke up at noon.
Giving them that chance.
And so one of the brothers lives in Wilmington.
And it's just kind of a variation on it, because sometimes I will,
So she moved
okay,
to
you guys design a legislative.
Are you flying back tomorrow?
Fayetteville. Family moved when she was like first.
The activity included, how would I prepare a question?
So fun. Well, this was, I had fascinating like 2 years ago.
It was really
Migrating.
I can't, like, honestly, I can't even, the whole idea of like putting together proposals, you know, putting together, oh, the room, it's just like,
You just need one.
yeah.
Really have to understand. 15-page art.
Dad
Just like,
and mom
I
moved
spent
back.
I was having
Things
flashbacks
get
to like
posted,
trying to
sign-ups
finish this
are there.
as a kid and being like,
Sister
I don't understand
and
any of this, I don't understand.
one
New
brother
video game guy.
Yeah.
the other brother
It's amazing
stayed in
how also
California.
just think that way, like,
the whole
wait,
time,
we,
Accessible.
She's barely.
Yeah, no, actually, a day and a half.
Well, it's fun, you're
steps away from
and you
taking
find things that you didn't even know existed,
So what are
and you're
those
like,
The
connections?
oldest
that's not an
siblings
issue.
almost
yeah.
Engaging
That's
in
the way, it's like, why do we take, and why do we test on
Instead of-
by the time
that,
you
and
change,
then we're
like
like,
by the
yeah,
time
I mean, that's.
Probably
so
letting
there's-
she design their home or discover
oldest kid was like 6 years old.
for themselves what
Now
are
it's
they
a couple of years where they overlap with this.
we had like the counter again.
She knows her brother Andy, just that kind of stuff.
I cannot understand,
Yeah.
you know, what your arguments are. Those sorts of things.
They're
They're doing themselves with each other, I should say, instead of everything coming from the
Her
podium.
mom gave me permission to marry her, like,
I don't know if
that we met.
it didn't work, I just,
No,
Send her an
it wasn't
email.
like the next time, because
once I
her
go
brothers
spend some time, this class is really great.
and so I went down
The syllabus is solid,
So when
materials
they're
are
in there, are you
solid,
in
at
there?
that point.
Yeah, so
Oh my
I
gosh, your
initially-
frustration must have
but
been
making
like,
that conversion.
So I learned that my face was really turning them off. I was making comments, but I was really ended up.
Some of that is just turning
So I know where that case came picked up from next to the desk. I would sit there in a chair just out of the way.
You still have to ask
in that
the
corner.
Oh, yeah.
What are
So
some
we've
things?
moved it to where I sit just
But, you know,
outside the
you've
door,
got our
which works when we
unofficial-
don't have people in the building,
Our
which
unofficial,
over summer break we don't,
Design up.
doesn't work.